Hello everyone and welcome back to Bitwig Studio and Music Production. This is lesson 5.39, and in this lesson we're going to talk about filtering, shaping, and controlling our distortion as it relates to the polysynth. Okay, so let's start by just kind of coming up with something really rich and full. Okay, so I'm very happy with that little bass sound. Let's not even worry too much about controlling the filter. Maybe we'll pull a little bit of this out, but honestly, what I'm looking to do is to probably add a bit of top end to this sound. And what I want to talk about here is the uniqueness of Bitwig Studio and its features, and the fact that we can actually add effects inside of other effects that are going to specifically then tame, or we can somehow allow which will allow for us to really control what we're doing. That was a horrible sentence, but it will make sense as I go through this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add on our distortion. And so this is only going to be unique and possible inside of Bitwig Studio's distortion. Let's right now go ahead and set this up. I'm actually not going to use the internal filters, which are, again, going to control specifically what's happening inside of the distortion device. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the wet effects, and I'm going to add, in this case, an EQ5. And let's also go on here and throw on a span for good measure. Okay, so we have our sound. We haven't applied any distortion yet. Let's go ahead and do that now. And let's use the tube model. Why not? I like tube B. That's what I call it. I really think it sounds nice. We'll add a decent amount of drive here. Maybe give it just a little bit of width, and let's see what we can get. Okay, so we can hear that distortion on and off. And if I pull this all the way up to 100% wet, we're only going to hear like the full-blown distorted signal. So let's take a listen to that. All right, so that's really pretty powerful. It actually sounds pretty good on its own. But let's say we want to really control this distortion, and that's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to then kind of mix that back in with the polysynth. So what I'm going to do here is this is going to be at pure random. What you might actually want to do is go and take a look at one of those frequency to note charts and understand that if you're just playing like a C note, or if C is your bass, you might want to hype some of those harmonics in there. But in our case, let's say that I really like the way this sounds on the low end, and maybe I want to hype that up a little bit. I could do that, and we're going to take this to an extreme just so you can hear what's happening. All right, so that's a huge jump, but I want to leave room in this 1K region for my other sounds that I'm going to have, especially specifically here in the distortion. So if I have like a bunch of leads and maybe a voice, I need to make sure I carve out a lot of room for that. And then if we want, we can add a little bit of sizzle on top, maybe around 12K. And then maybe somewhere in this 200 range, we also want to cut a bit. All right, so this at 100% isn't going to be too useful to us. We can hear that there's something definitely missing in this signal, but that's what our original tone is going to be for. So as I pull this mix back, remember, without this on at all, we have this. I can now decide how much of this distortion with the EQ I want to bring in. Maybe I don't want to lose all of that top end, so I can even kind of go in here then and shape it further. So this, it seems like not that big of a deal, but this is saving us so much in routing time, and it's also giving us a very unique sound. So what we're doing, just to recap, is I came up with a basic oscillator wave shape, played it through, added in a distortion, and then where things really get interesting is that I can actually specifically affect the distorted signal with this wet effects section here. If I take this EQ outside of the wet effects, what I'm doing now is I'm basically going and running this whole thing through the distortion and then running the whole thing through an EQ, and this is what it would sound like. If I drop it in, so we can hear how that mid-range, we're still keeping some of that from the original, okay? And we're not going to completely lose it by EQing our sound so extremely and so heavily. And you can use this in so many ways, either very subtly or in very extreme circumstances. And I think it's really, really a cool effect and something you just can't do anywhere else. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. In the next video, we're going to talk about a lot more complex ways of setting this up and some other ways that we can control, tame, and variously shape our distorted sound. Thank you so much for watching, and you'll hear from me again in the next lesson. Take care.